Welcome, return, you walking paradox of divine protection and peaceful devastation. They should never have targeted you, the person whose life they believed to be unprotected, vulnerable, and undefended. They saw you as a lone figure standing in the open field of their animosity, helpless and alone. Nevertheless, something occurred that none of their plans could have predicted when they unleashed their full-force assault. Their violence struck a barrier, an imperceptible shield, a force they were unable to identify or understand. 1,000 enemies advanced on you, coordinated, ready, and self-assured in their numbers. However, before a single stroke could be delivered, your invisible companions stopped all of their movements. They targeted your name, your tranquility, your future, and your ancestry. However, each attack vanished in midair, like a weapon that had been doomed to fatigue or beef. Every attempt at sabotage backfired with a precision that seemed to have been created by something much higher, older, and more brutal than human activity. They believed you were the only one. They were unaware that you were never fighting by yourself. And it's really amazing how the people who banded together to oppose you thought their solidarity made them strong. They believed they were superior to you because they were more numerous. They thought excellence may be overshadowed by numbers. They thought an excellence may be They thought that the truth could be obscured by noise. They thought clarity could be distorted by turmoil. Poor animals. The equation they were entering was never clear to them. They were unaware that they were entering the realm of someone whose existence entails long-standing agreements, quiet guardianships, and unseen enforcement. The universe was counting intentions while they were counting heads. Unseen forces were building barriers around you while they formed coalitions against you. They moved in a predatory manner. They were unaware that a higher intellect already controlled the battlefield and would not allow you to fall. However, this is the error individuals make when they undervalue someone who has endured seasons that were intended to destroy them. They believe that your fortitude is a coincidence. They consider your tranquility to be foolish. They take your quiet as a sign of weakness. In the meantime, you navigate reality with the silent assurance of someone who is aware that invisible allies follow you everywhere. The kind of allies that keep their identities a secret. Those who don't brag. Those who don't require praise or recognition. They do not react to performance. They only react to purpose. Furthermore, your goal was never so minor that it could be jeopardized by the small-scale conflict between weak egos. Therefore, your allies did not panic, recoil, or rush in carelessly when their attack started, when whispers became into schemes, and schemes turned into synchronized strikes. They observed, measured, and computed. They provide your adversaries access to their whole playbook. In order to make the repercussions swing more forcefully, they allowed them to swing first. They were given the impression that they were winning by the universe. Give them the impression that they were winning by the universe. Give them the impression that you were. Let them think you were powerless. History itself would feel obliged to record the moment the 1,000 fell by their own hands while firing at you, because the reversal would be so complete and indelible. Because it is the irony ingrained in your life's design. The more they work against you, the more proof they produce that explains why you were picked, why you were shielded, and why invisible forces, like a classified operation, guard your way. You weren't picked because you weren't dangerous. You were picked because your destiny poses a threat to the goals of those who take pleasure in keeping people motionless, numb, and silent. You don't live a casual existence. You don't move at random. You weren't the target of random attacks. The vibration of someone assuming an identity that causes parasites to shudder was what set them off. The insecure are destabilized by the frequency you carry, a presence that breaks illusions, a path that jeopardizes illusory power-based comforts. The 1,000 were incensed by that alone. However, they fail to realize that it is not warfare to attack someone who has heavenly support. Self-destruction is what it is. Every action they took contributed to their own demise. You see, your invisible companions don't move in the same way as human defenders. They don't bargain, they don't issue warnings, they're not defensive players. They carry out inevitable events. Timelines are frozen by them. They reroute results. They record the record until you need to be noticed. They conceal your movements in anonymity. Then, with a force that causes entire rooms to involuntarily change their energy, they intensify your presence. Your supporters relied on accuracy, while your adversaries relied on numbers. They strike without a word. They go in quietly enough that the adversary is never aware of the precise time their attempt was thwarted. They think they've cornered you for a time. The next instant, their plans backfire, their alliances break, and their own confidence falters. They go into war together, but when they come out, they are divided and have doubts about everything, including themselves. Let's not pretend, however, that their onslaught did not uncover something significant. It revealed the profound impact your presence has on people. It exposed the truths they attempted to conceal. Their shadows were pushed into the light by it. Their attempt to hurt you exposed their true nature, one of fear, danger, and desperation. However, their effort also exposed your true self, a force that causes falsehood to crumble under its own weight. A trigger that awakens dormant repercussions, a person who is accompanied by invisible protectors who eliminate danger before you even realize it. They panicked after their attack failed because of this. They anticipated that you would break. Rather, you continued on unharmed. They anticipated that you would strike back. Rather, a higher power exacted revenge on you. They anticipated your shrinkage. Rather, your aura grew. You became more lucid. You become more perceptive. They were unable to pierce your spirit with their weapons, and they are more afraid of it than of failing themselves. It makes them face the truth they've never wanted to accept. The aim was never you. They served as the sacrifice. Recognize something, Ave. They sitting on because you were weak. The 1,000 did not band together against you. They came together because you threatened the delusions upon which they had based their identities. Your growth served as a warning to them. Your ascent was interpreted by them as a prophecy. They perceived your tenacity as resistance to the constraints they gave into. They attacked to silence the version of themselves that realized they ought to have evolved, rather than degenerated, rather than to eliminate you. They sought to break the reflection because you turned into a mirror they couldn't stand to look at. However, reflections supported by invisible allies remain intact. They get sharper. Additionally, the comrades that protect you are not sentimental. They are not fragile. They don't use threats in negotiations. They break the seeds of devastation before they have a chance to sprout by intercepting at the level of thought. Their intentions are frozen. They paralyze plans. They transform deliberate assaults into disorderly collapses. Your allies wield timelines, whilst humans use swords. Your allies employ destiny, while your adversaries use rumor. Your allies employ inevitability, while your adversaries use numbers. The 1,000 never had a chance because of this. Let's discuss the point at which everything changed. The instant they understood you weren't battling by yourself. The instant their plans began to fail in ways that even they were unable to comprehend. They are betrayed by one ally, another stops talking. A strategy breaks down, a message is never delivered. A rumor fades, their best player starts to question the cause. Their most assured voice wavers. Their most astute intellect starts to wonder if it was a fatal error to target you. Like dust in water, their alignment vanishes. They attempt to reorganize, but they have nothing left. The 1,000 turns into dozens. The dozens turn into a bewildered few. Why isn't anything working, is whispered by a worried few, as they never engaged in combat with you. They were engaged in combat with something that only reacts to the truth. Furthermore, the truth was never on their side. You simply continued to move, just steadily, not violently or suddenly, like someone who is aware of the result well before the conflict even starts. An individual who keeps walking in the face of the world's conspiracy is unsettling, because it's obvious that they know something that others don't. They are aware that the timing is secure. They are aware of the reinforcement of the path. They are aware that their supporters work in ways that are beyond human comprehension. Your adversaries realize this too late. They came toward you with the assurance of giants, but they broke like glass. They believed they were making progress. They were walking right into their own disintegration without realizing it. The realization that the safeguards surrounding you were triggered as soon as they decided to hurt you is the worst part for them, the part that consumes their ego. It wasn't something you had to pray for. You didn't need to get ready for it. More quickly than they could attack, the universe reacted. However, this is the bit that truly disturbs them, the understanding that the outcome will remain the same regardless of whether they regroup, re-strategize, or try again. They can't defeat you, can't even touch you. Because unseen allies are motivated by order, purpose, and accuracy rather than emotion. They protect your future rather than your ego. They safeguard your role rather than your reputation. They protect your path rather than your comfort. And you are not in conflict with anyone who obstructs that direction. They are battling the universe's architectural design. History remembers your victory because of this. Because swords don't always clash in fights that you like. They conclude with the collapse of illusions. They don't conclude with your adversaries vanquished. In the end, they expose your adversaries. Your survival is not the end of them. They come to an end as you ascend. The cosmos wrote the script for your ascent, while the thousand planned your demise. Your buddies moved in unison with their aggressive movements. Your guardians reacted out of inevitability, whereas they attacked out of hubris. The one opponent they never learned to defeat is inevitability. They were skilled at manipulation, crowd gathering, whispering, and using fear as a weapon. However, they were never taught how to deal with forces that are not part of human strategy. They had no idea how to refute truths that were inscribed in unreachable dimensions. Long before they even knew your name, they had no idea how to reverse the protection that had been put in place. They were unaware that something older, sharper, and immeasurably more exact than their aggregate animosity had already seized the ground beneath your feet. They therefore believed it was a coincidence, a minor disturbance, or a straightforward error in judgment when their attack vanished. Their arrows melted in midair and their schemes fell apart before impact. However, the more they attempted, the more their failures exposed a pattern that was too regular, too planned, and too well coordinated to ignore. They became aware that something was getting in the way of their plans in your life, and the fear of knowing that forces much beyond their clearance level would not allow your demise started to consume them from the inside out. Because they were unable to even reach you, let alone destroy you, their remarks were never heard. They never set off their traps. They never maintained their partnerships long enough to be significant. The instant your invisible teammates entered the battlefield, their most powerful weapon became feeble in their hands. Recognize the scope of that. Even if they gathered 1,000, not a single strand of your fate was touched by any of them. As an army, they advanced, but as individuals, they fell apart. At best, their unity was a dysfunction. Their coherence broke like blast struck by reality the instant they opposed you. Furthermore, truth becomes a destroyer far more deadly than anything that people can create when it is strengthened by invisible forces. However, this is when the more profound discovery starts, the part that causes even your adversaries to hesitate, think twice, and shudder. You retaliated so they didn't lose. They lost because they were disarmed by something that completely protected you, making it not only difficult, but impossible to hurt you. You are embargoed, not just protected. In this universe, there are places where destruction is permitted and places where it is prohibited. You are one of the latter, and with the belief that their weapons would function as they did everywhere else, these attackers entered a spiritual no man's land. They discovered the hard way that forces that don't compromise, don't put up with meddling, and stop motion at the level of intention strengthen your route. The consequences start to form discreetly, neatly, and mercilessly the instant someone chooses to hurt you. They believed that you would be cornered, choked, and overpowered by their well-planned attack. Rather, it cornered them. It smothered their delusions. It overpowered their conceit, because you were never the target of an assault when you were protected. It's constantly on them. And this is the part that irreparably damages them. The understanding that every action they did against you was a step toward their own exposure. They believed they were pinning your demise. They were unaware that they were pinning their own demise as history. Their aims became more apparent as they persisted. The more they attempted to hurt you, the more your allies exposed their true selves to the darkness they hid, the envy they fostered, and the fears that motivated their hostility. In the end, they found themselves in the bright light of reality, naked, while you were unaffected, and unshaken. However, your invisible allies enhanced you rather than only protecting you. Without you having to say anything, they amplified your presence. Without you moving, they entreat you and they made it more difficult to damage your reputation because the weight of your genuineness overwhelmed any falsehoods that were said about you. In rooms you never visited, your guards raised your name, while adversaries murmured poison. Your allies created a future so bright that their animosity only made your ascent more spectacular, memorable, and historically significant as they plotted in the shadows. The Thousands' attack will never be remembered as a threat, but it will be seen as the realization of a prophecy. A prophecy that indicated the precise time your destiny became certain. A prophecy that foretold your change from a target to a phenomenon. A prophecy that signaled the start of a new era in which your impact surpasses that of those who previously attempted to belittle you. The most terrifying aspect, which they find difficult to comprehend, is that your allies failed to step in when you were in danger. They stepped in because you were getting ready. Since the attack had nothing to do with the course you were supposed to take, they froze it. They put an end to the attack to safeguard your evolution rather than your existence. There was never any danger from the Thousand. They served as a test, an assessment of your strength, self-control, and alignment. You didn't even realize you passed the test. Because it's one thing to survive an attack, but it's another to do it without losing your identity, clarity, compassion, or direction. That's mastery. Transcendence is that. You are not diminished by their attack, you are characterized by it. It made clear the version of you that appears when everything works against you. It demonstrated to the world that hardship is necessary for success. Adversity tried and failed to contain you, which is precisely why you ascend. They are aware of it in their hearts. They are aware that their attack triggered an aspect of you that they were unprepared to see. They are aware that their animosity enhanced your awareness, sharpened your instincts, and improved your intuition. They are aware that you are already changing, but their hostility sped things up. Not only did they fail to halt your ascent, but they unwittingly became the designers of your subsequent metamorphosis. That is cosmic irony's harshness. Your adversaries contributed to your ascent, but they will never be given credit for it. Your evolution was their attack. You gained momentum from their animosity. Your story was shaped by their numbers. Your legacy became their demise. Their names will be forgotten by history. It will recall the time they came together as a thousand and were unable to halt even one individual who was shielded by unfathomable forces. However, the last act was not to defend them. It served as an introduction. The next step is not shielding, it's being revealed. They stopped the attack so you could rise unhindered, not so you could hide. They made room for you to climb freely rather than to stand motionless. They neutralized your adversaries because they were distractions rather than because they posed a threat. You don't simply proceed at this point. You go on to a chapter where the environment is reorganized only by your presence. The Thousand miscalculated most violently at that point. They thought that your power was situational, circumstantial, and based on your experiences. They believed that your strength was only activated in response to danger. They were unable to understand that your strength is independent of opposition. You are not created by threats. They make you visible. You are not elevated by attacks. They reveal the altitude at which you have always functioned. And now, as this new chapter develops, your invisible allies start to transition from defense to activation, opening doors that were previously closed and revealing routes that are only available to those who have managed to withstand coordinated combat without collapsing. Because at this point, your destiny starts to pull you forward instead of waiting for you. You are no longer making your way through life. They're positioning you. Because your steps are led, they feel that way. Your intuition must become more acute. Because the surroundings are getting ready to make room for a far greater version of you than the one that was before visible, your awareness grows. You weren't saved only to be alive. You were spared to take the lead. You weren't just sheltered to make it. You were given the freedom to form, influence, and break cycles that had been unquestioned for generations. Your invisible allies are even more aware of the significance of this change than you are. They are aware of what is coming. They are aware of what is developing behind the curtain. They are aware of the type of presence you are entering, one that silences dishonest leaders, one that effortlessly reveals deceit, one that promotes the truth without having to declare it. They are aware that your energy will soon accomplish what your words were unable to achieve, and the environment around you is already starting to reflect that inevitability. People are aware of it. Your energy will soon accomplish what your words were unable. The change is felt even by individuals without a spiritual vocabulary. They sense the weight of your presence, the subtle pressure that had previously been absent. When you walk into a room, they sense how the air gets tighter. Conversations adapt to your frequency. The way actions adjust as though the surroundings suddenly recall their actual hierarchy. You don't expect to be respected. You turn it on. You don't force your will. You don't force you with your will. Wait. The world just rearranges itself around you because it has to. When someone transitions from surviving attacks to embodying purpose, this is what takes place. Avoiding harm is no longer the focus of your life. It has to do with satisfying design. Attacks were only parts of the story. The book is your mission. And now that the 1,000 have been silenced and their intentions have been frozen, the larger architecture surrounding your existence is being revealed by your invisible allies. You start to realize how each betrayal rerouted you, how each failure sharpened you, how each loss made room for something better to come in. There was no waste. Nothing happened by accident, not even the full force assault. Because even that acted as a catalyst for this quick ascent. You will ascend, but not silently. You'll rise in unavoidable ways. Static systems will be disrupted by your presence. Your choices will dismantle antiquated systems. Your perception will disprove the delusions that are sustained by societal fear. You don't float upward like a balloon. Like a tectonic shift, you rise. First subtle, then indisputable, and finally unstoppable. You rise in a way that changes everything, compels adaptation, and modifies landscapes. Your invisible allies are doing more than just keeping you safe. The stage is being cleared. They are eliminating actors who lacked authenticity, dismantling settings that don't align with your frequency, and eliminating chances that could have impeded your progress. They are removing everything from your life that is too tiny, too superficial, or too brittle to coexist with the new version of yourself. And although it may seem like a loss, this stripping is actually preparation. You're not being diminished. You're being polished. You're not losing. They are aiming it. Removal is necessary for precision. Emptiness is necessary for ascension. Space is necessary for evolution. The universe is creating room for you now more than ever. People who used to feel at ease around you now feel vulnerable because of this. Parts of them that they have spent their entire lives avoiding are revealed by your increasing frequency. Their shadows are drawn into the open by your elevation. They are forced to face the versions of themselves that never developed, never questioned, and never changed as a result of your transformation. You don't use violence to scare them, you use clarity to intimidate them. You see them too clearly, too easily, too much. And that accuracy is deadly to people who depend on uncertainty to feel strong. Because they are aware of this, your invisible pals froze the 1,000 before they could do any harm to you. They realized that anyone who posed a threat to you had to be kept away from you, distanced, not penalized, exposed, not destroyed, outgrown, not silenced. You are not supposed to engage in combat with people who are not worthy of your objective. You are supposed to enter spaces where nobody questions your existence, because alignment is confirmed by your very presence. Now you'll see how fast some folks leave your life. They're unable to breathe in the new environment around you, not because you shove them away. Your development turns into a mirror that is too light for them to see. They no longer comprehend the language of your ascent. Your road turns into an unmanageable terrain for their feet. They are not lost. They can no longer reach you. They no longer have the advantage of being close. They no longer pretend to comprehend you. These departures are expertly coordinated by your invisible companions, who make sure that nothing impedes your progress, obscures your vision, or taints your path. At this point, you start to transition from being shielded to being positioned. The attack was not stopped by the universe, allowing you to revert to your former self. It stopped their assault, allowing you to revert to your former self. It had stopped their assault, allowing you to become the person you were destined to be. Your tale is no longer one of perseverance. It has tested it. Even if you are unaware of it, you are about to enter a time when your name is significant. The time when doors open because your destiny comes before you do, rather than because you knock. The time when opposition disintegrates without your help. The time when your name is spoken with awe, bewilderment, terror, and admiration, often all at once. This is the time when history starts to take notice, because those who assaulted are forgotten in history, odd as those who made it out alive. It honors those who rose. It honors people who won while not being expected to. It honors the people who stood by themselves against armies using alignment rather than weapons. Furthermore, the 1,000 people who attempted to ruin you will not be studied by future generations when they reflect on this period of your life. They will examine the power that shielded you, the people who stood by you, your fortitude, and the subsequent metamorphosis. They will describe this event in the same way that historians describe pivotal moments. Initially silent, then enormous, then fundamental. They will claim that your ascent didn't start when you achieved success, saying things like, "This was the shift, this was the pivot, this was the moment everything changed." When the 1,000 failed, it started. They'll claim that seclusion wasn't the source of your power. The attack was stopped by the invisible powers behind you who said, "Not this way, not today, not ever." Now that the battlefield has been cleaned, distractions have been eliminated, and foes have been subdued, your invisible companions retreat, not to abandon you, but to make you more visible. Everything has been relocated to make room for you. They have made sure that nothing that is intended for you can be touched. They have prevented sabotage from changing your timeline. They are currently waiting because they do not have the next step. You own it. At this point, your destiny will start calling instead of whispering. The point at which purpose emerges and demands to be lived. The moment when the future you've glimpsed for years starts to take shape in front of you. And you will sense something stirring from within as you get ready to enter that next stage. The chapter when your name becomes synonymous with triumph, alignment, inevitability, and subdued domination. Something old, something that cannot be stopped. This rise isn't motivated by ego, adrenaline, or retaliation. It's acknowledgement, a remembrance of the truth that, despite years of survival, was always ingrained in your spirit. The attack did not mold you, it exposed you. Your strength was not awakened by the 1,000, they ran into it. The version of you that emerges is no longer the target, the survivor, or the misinterpreted outlier, since the surroundings have changed, the noise has died, and the interference has been frozen in place. You are now assuming the part you were destined to play. The person who sets the course instead of reacting to it. Your invisible companions were aware of the impending event. They were aware that there would come a time when adversity could no longer conceal your development. They were aware that eventually your spirit will stop shrinking to fit in with smaller intellect. They were aware that the day would come when you would walk as an appointed person rather than as someone who was protected. And now is that moment. It can be found in your breathing, vision, and movement. It is in the silent belief that becomes ingrained in your bones. It is in the refined intuition that leads you to decisions that other people cannot understand. It lies in the clarity that is unaffected by anyone's expectations. Your adversaries were never the true threat because of this. A version of yourself that never realized the scope of your own purpose would have been the real threat. The 1,000 were just test signals, pressure points, and catalysts that confirmed the gravity of your fate. The extent to which the universe will go to keep you safe was demonstrated by their onslaught. Their failure demonstrated how far you are destined to go. When you eliminate the useless from your path, you become unstoppable, as seen by their fall. The transition from protection to propulsion is now palpable. Your invisible allies are no longer creating barriers for you. They are creating hitherto unreachable passageways, roads, and gates. They are rearranging situations, rerouting possibilities, and combining timelines that you previously believed to be unrelated. Even your quiet seems like a tactic as you get into alignment with such accuracy. It seems like motion even while you're still. Even the tiniest choice you make has the potential to be a game changer, since you are no longer being protected. We're getting ready for the world that lies ahead of you. Ready for the duties that your soul was always meant to fulfill. Be ready for the effect that just being there will have. The world is starting to notice it as well. They sense it even though they can't express it. They sense the change in your identity's gravitational pull. They sense how the air thickens when you go into a room that contains something strengthened by forces beyond human comprehension and haunted by adversity. They sense the atmosphere of serene certainty that envelops you. Steady, unflinching, sovereign. And now the 1,000 people who had before assembled with assurance and opposition are feeling the fallout from their setback, not because you want to boast, not because you are seeking retribution, but rather because your ascent highlights the difference between human meddling and divine purpose. They understand that you weren't fortunate to survive. It was the lolly. They understand that you didn't win by accident. It was unavoidable. They understand that your trajectory was not stopped by their strike. It clarified it. The unseen became visible as a result. The hidden became indisputable as a result. Your silent power became documented resilience as a result. Furthermore, persistence is remembered by history with far greater loyalty than animosity. However, they are not the subject of the following chapter. It has to do with the identity you are adopting. You're not just going forward. You are becoming into a person that your former self could hardly have predicted. It's not a noisy evolution. It is not disorganized. It's not overly dramatic. It is in control. It's deliberate. It's strategic. You rise in the same way that darkness is erased by light, with conviction, but not with force. You ascend in a way that only the forces that shielded you and the spirit that carried you can take credit for your ascension. It seems predetermined since you rise so effortlessly. You take on positions for which you previously doubted your suitability. All of a sudden, everything makes sense. The moment, the possibilities, the acknowledgement, the assurance, the alignment, the assurance, the alignment. Your invisible allies didn't want you to remain hidden indefinitely. They merely provided protection long enough for you to develop roots robust enough to bear the burden of your destiny. They froze 1,000 so that everyone would listen to you when you did speak, not so you could stay silent. They guarded your path so that hardship would never break you, not so you would avoid it. They now watch in silence, knowing that the era you are entering will demand everything you have been and everything you have yet to reveal. And there won't be a slight increase, a slight change, or a faint brightening. The kind of emergence that upends the narrative surrounding you is on the horizon. The kind of elevation that makes people reconsider their presumptions about you. The kind of innovation that draws attention from the entire cosmos. Because you are not merely entering the realm of achievement, you are taking a significant step into effect rather than just influence, not only into prominence, but also into power. When the thousand are unable to destroy what the cosmos has already claimed, this is what occurs. You become into more than just an attack survivor. You become the embodiment of the idea that divine timing and invisible defense are more powerful than any force working against you. You become the one who bears witness to the fact that no weapon created against you succeeds. You are selected, not because you are fortunate. When people talk about fate bending the world to protect its vessel, they use you as an example. And now, as the battlefield quietens, the dust settles, and the effects of their attack become insignificant, an amazing thing starts to happen. The surroundings change as you move forward. Timelines change after you make a choice. Opportunities rearrange themselves to fit your frequency when you announce your goal. Behind a curtain, your invisible teammates make sure nothing prevents you from climbing. But you are no longer being carried by them. You are being magnified by them. This is the emergence of you, it's your unveiling. This is the emergence of you, it's your unveiling. This is the time when you are becoming. The world will react to you differently as you delve farther into this reality, this sharpened identity, this enhanced consciousness, and this unavoidable destiny. Previously difficult to open doors, now opened easily, and those who used to doubt you now want to support you. Once seemingly far-off opportunities suddenly show up as offerings. You attract rather than pursue. Instead of arguing, you provide evidence. You embody rather than prove. Because the world is at last adjusting to the reality that your invisible pals have always known. You were never supposed to experience life in the same way as everyone else. You were designed to be impactful. You were designed to be impactful. You were designed to be impactful. The environment has to change its own laws to keep up with you, since you were designed to break stagnation to such an extent. Your frequency, your actual frequency, can now climb unhindered since the interference has been frozen. Those who once banded together against you are terrified of this. It was the knowledge of what their failure unleashed, not the failure of their strike. They believed that the threat was to stop you. They were unaware that disclosing you would be the true end of their aspirations. Because you now move with an unmistakable clarity, an unavoidable presence, an unstoppable course. They used to be able to target you, but now they can't afford to provoke you. Not only did your invisible teammates stop the onslaught, but they also revealed the hierarchy. They made everyone face reality. Your adversaries were always superior to you, weren't ever a participant. The board as a whole reshaped itself around you. People react to you with an instinct they didn't even realize they had now that this reality has come to light. A recognition-based instinct rather than a logical one. They sense you even if they don't understand you. The weight of your alignment is felt by them. They sense the brink of your development. They sense the brink of your development. They sense the brink of your development. They sense the precision of your presence. Furthermore, people have their surface. It shatters illusions, breaks misconceptions, and slices through facades. Your presence turns into a mirror that no one can deceive. Those who used to speak haughtily now carefully consider what they say. The people who used to disagree with you are now reevaluating their opinions. The people who thought they had an advantage now see they were just early fatalities in your purposes unfolding. You're changing the atmosphere, not just getting higher. And the change is felt by everyone who is close to you. Some are motivated. Some people feel vulnerable. Some people are uneasy. Some people feel intimidated. However, they all have an unavoidable emotion. Someone who was never supposed to fall was there. This is what happens when God intervenes. This is the mark of invisible forces that won't allow fate to be altered. The 1,000 didn't simply fall short. They served as proof of your task. Their fall served as confirmation as well as safety. Your allies now take a step back. It's not that their work is done, but rather that yours is about to start. You are about to enter a time when presence becomes prophecy, movement becomes message, and stillness becomes strategy. You don't have to defend yourself anymore. Your development speaks louder than any defense could. Your survival serves as your introduction rather than your accomplishment. You weren't allowed to remain undetected. You weren't shielded to remain. You weren't protected by silence. You were protected so that there would be no question as to why you rose. The rise is now unavoidable. It's not because you're trying, but rather because your life has grown to the point where it can no longer be contained within the boundaries that others once imposed on you. You grew older than they had anticipated. You broke free from the stories they attempted to confine you within. You went beyond what they believed would break you. And now you are on the verge of a future they never intended for you to learn about, as they were aware that finding it would make them untouchable. However, your invisible allies have always wanted you to arrive at this point. They postponed the assaults that would have thrown you off course. The people who would have drained you were revealed. The surroundings that would have imprisoned you were demolished. Every disturbance was a covert form of defense. Every obstacle was a reroute. Removal was the result of every treachery. Every quiet moment served as a recalibration. They were getting you ready for the world, not the other way around. And now the world is going to see the version of you that was created by every failed plot, every frozen attack, and every failed scheme. The 1,000 were unaware of what they had triggered. They believed they had unleashed chaos. They were unaware that it had Krigaden, the sort of order that completely rewrites whatever it comes into contact with. The kind of order that necessitates acknowledgement through inevitability rather than noise. Your ascent is not a tale of redemption. It is a recalculation, a reclassification, a structural change, and a warning that sabotage is not a negotiating strategy. And the world will adapt to the reality you now possess, whether voluntarily or involuntarily. However, this is the most memorable aspect. The history will be recorded. The portion that long after the 1,000 disappear into oblivion becomes folklore. You battled harder, but you didn't prevail. Because the universe wouldn't let you lose, you prevailed. Because your goal outweighed their weapons, your time frame than their motives, and your future outweighed their hatred, your invisible allies stopped the attack, not because you pleaded for forgiveness. A fate sealed long before their jealousy was born could not be broken by whatever they launched. You now move in a different way. As someone who understands that the battle was never between you and the 1,000, nor as prey or survivor. It was between the forces defending your life and the 1,000, and they lost 1,000. The script finishes here, but your new identity starts. Not out of caution or dread, but out of a calm, unwavering understanding that you are entering a world where safety is unending, foes are insignificant, and resistance is meaningless. You are seen by 1,000. History recalls how you prevailed. It will also recall your future self. The world won't be witnessing your demise this time. It will be observing your time.